Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Carolyn Schofield, and I've been tasked with conducting a communications audit in our Public Relations 2101 class, and the company I chose to audit today is the MEOW Foundation. They are a cat shelter located in Calgary, Alberta. Let's get right into it. So today on the agenda, I'll do a brief introduction. I'll go over an organizational summary. I'll identify the target audiences of the messages we're analyzing, the key messages, whatever observations and analysis I have concluded, my recommendations, and my conclusion. There'll be a little bit of appendices and also a bonus slide on why my opinion matters. When we think of rescue shelters, it's easy to picture the pets someone had to surrender because they had to move, or one someone had an allergy to. But more often than not, it's the overwhelming amount of feral and stray cats roaming around our province that end up walking through these doors. These cats need medical care. They need love. They need shelter and our support. That is why this endeavor is critical, that their communication is succinct and delivered in the right channels. To look at the magnitude of this, in 2020, there was just shy of 60,000 cats placed in animal shelters across the country. 4 years ago in 2018, Environment Canada estimated there was between 1.2 and 5 million cats across Canada. The sad issue is that many of these animals end up in shelters where they are euthanized. What makes MEOW Foundation stand out amongst animal shelters is that they are a no-kill shelter that also participates in a number of free or low-cost spay-neuter programs. Now, we saw a massive uptake in the pandemic of people actually adopting cats and getting them out of the shelters. But what happened once the COVID pandemic died down and everyone started to go back to work, we started seeing headlines like, "More pandemic pets are ending up in shelters. Is there a fix?" Everything has gone up. Animal shelters struggling to keep up with rising costs. Canadian animal shelters pushing over capacity amid inflation with massive staff shortages. Now more than ever, MEOW Foundation requires succinct communication with their stakeholders to ensure they can keep up with the growing demands of their industry.
Somebody please think of the...
All the kitties! I also conducted a brief organizational summary. Inside that, I noted that their mission statement was to champion the well-being of cats through humane programs, advocacy, and education. Their vision statement was that all communities caring for every cat with respect and compassion. Their guiding principles include respect, no-kill philosophy, standard of care, happy homes, cats and people, collaboration, and our people. So directly tied into that is their top 5 stakeholders, which I managed to get details on when I looked at where their funding actually comes from. The top stakeholders, of course, number 1 would be the staff and volunteers, without which organizations like this could not exist. Owners and prospective cat owners come in a close second, along with the general public, as even some of my friends who don't like cats still interact with this kind of content and share it to people like myself who love cats. Noting that 26% of their revenue comes from their retail outlets, the MEOW Thrift Store, the Regal Cat Cafe, Stitch and Cedar, and also that suppliers and vet clinics are incremental to brands like this success. They need them in order to get the low-cost services and supplies that they need to get to the cats. When analyzing the target audiences, I took a look at 3 critical vehicles where the communication is being distributed by MEOW Foundation. First of all, I had a look at the social media. Now, they seem to have a decent setup on social media. Their primary audience appears to be cat owners and prospective owners. Secondary audience shows a internal communication between the staff and volunteers, and also an external communication to the general public. I noticed similar trends among their press releases, where again the primary audience was cat owners and prospective owners, and the secondary audience included again that internal conversation between the staff and the volunteers, who are critical to these kind of endeavors, and of course right at the general public again. However, when we look at the third source, which was annual reviews, these actually help a lot of the vet clinics and suppliers. It gives them a good gauge as to what they're going to get back, their return on their investment with endeavors such as this. And the secondary audience, of course, are the associated charity retailers and funding groups, which help MEOW Foundation survive. So when we analyze the key messages through these different vehicles, I wanted to take a look at a couple different samples from each one just to get a good idea of what we're looking at. So I noticed a strategy of consistency across all social media platforms. For example, this post on Twitter showcases the young lady working at MEOW Foundation with her cat in tow being her little coworker. Now the coworker, as you can see, is working very hard, but these kind of humorous and emotional appeals are very consistent with this kind of delivery, and it's what we expect to see with a cat shelter. Furthermore, we see the strategy use of reciprocity. We see what it's like for a volunteer, a day in the life working with the MEOW Foundation, which is great because volunteers are how nonprofit organizations are able to keep going. We also see strategies like social proof. Well, maybe I want to be a cat foster parent, but I don't have room in my house. Well, then you could be doing humane trapping and helping with the trap and neuter programs to help keep excessive amounts of animals off the streets. It also promotes the cat's health in the long run. Furthermore, we see strategies using happy endings. Now, this isn't an exact strategy per se, but I like to throw it in there because I think for nonprofits like this, happy endings are a big draw. I myself helped reunite an owner with a cat that had been missing for 4 months. It is such a feel-good story. These kind of things are wonderful PR for not-for-profit organizations. We also see when we look through the lens of the annual review, we see a sense of authority. We see hard numbers that we can follow, we can track, we can measure, and that makes all the difference in ensuring that our messages are being received properly, that they're being believed, that they're being trusted. We know that these are curated reports directly to the stakeholders. And furthermore, when we look to the newsrooms and the press releases, this is probably a strategy we've been so familiar with since the pandemic, would be one of scarcity. So we start seeing the animal shelters are pushing overcapacity amid inflation and staff shortages. There's that fear. There's that, oh my gosh, we have to help the kitties. And I mean, we gotta help the kitties, right? And the other thing we're looking at here are the different levels of tone. And I wanted to note how authoritative and fear-driven both tend to overlap in the sense that they will almost always be delivered with a formal voice. Fear-driven, you often notice a call to action. They're saying, we need this, help, help. And of course, we will jump to the call. In the authoritative voice, you'll notice it's expert, it's measurable, and of course with the emotional, we see funny, sad, uplifting, friendly, and 9 times out of 10, it's delivered in an informal voice. So I conducted an analysis of these various communication vehicles and I made the following observations. With regard to social media, what was working was there was daily posting, effective hashtags, a variety of content. And what I mean by that is in social media, we don't expect people to be asking or selling all the time. We expect a bit of reciprocity. We expect you to give more than you expect to get. And there was definitely a lot of emotional give from MEOW Foundation. And along with consistent branding, which makes it easy to identify all of their messages on the given channels. I found these messages to be effective, relevant, appropriate for the audience, and easily reachable by whomever needed to receive them. What I found wasn't working via social media was that there seemed to be no active social media manager or strategist. So what do I mean by this and how was I able to identify that? Well, when I took a look at the comments on some of these posts, I noticed that there was little social interaction back with the comments. While somebody was clearly liking the comments from the brand, there was no reciprocated comment to that user's initial comment. And while that seems like a small thing, that interaction with the consumer is immeasurable on the social media spectrum. The ways it can grow your brand is absolutely astronomical, and it's something I would suggest to every single social media campaign manager. There also seemed to be a missed opportunity with local influencers. So influencers are trusted people by the public who can speak to a certain subject or product, and there are so many cat lovers out there. So why aren't we using this opportunity to partner with local influencers? And lastly, on 3 out of the 4 platforms that I analyzed, the virility of their posts were not consistent with the virility of cats on digital platforms. So what do I mean by that? Well, in order to gauge that, I'd have to know how much cat content is on the internet. So let's take a look. When we look at the entire internet, there is 64 zettabytes of content. So how much of that is cats? Well, cats accounts for about 16% of that content. So if cats are 16% of zettabytes, by the way, a zettabyte works out to a trillion gigabytes, I believe, it would work out to 9.6 zettabytes or 9.6 trillion gigabytes of cats on the internet. So it's something that people love to watch. So it's something we really want to engage. Furthermore, when I took a look at the press releases, what worked is I saw persuasive headlines, and I saw that the newsrooms that they were pairing with were providing an improved search engine optimization for these posts. They were effective at their time, they were relevant, they were appropriate, but they didn't seem to be reached by enough avenues that should be picking up something of this magnitude as far as stories go. So how would I fix that? Well, it's hard to beat the noise. So how do we beat the noise when a pandemic is happening or a war is happening? How do we make it matter for us to take a moment and stop and save the kitties? Well, often in PR, one of the mistakes people make is they send PR releases, or sorry, a press release to a newsroom directly. Just send it generally to, whomever admin. Whereas if you take the time to get a bit more granular with that research and take a look on LinkedIn or through Google and directly contact the journalists themselves of a number of these different news outlets, you can notice that these similar stories are getting picked up by multiple outlets at a time. And when multiple outlets are speaking about the same thing, that's how we create a trend. So there is no reason why something as amazing as the MEOW Foundation can't be trending when they get their press at the right time, at the right place, to the right people. So I'd love to see a curated list of journalists who have a direct interest in saving cats and in the preservation of making a better life for animals, the same way that MEOW Foundation is. And furthermore, when I took a look at their annual review, I noticed it was annually circulated, definitely informative. It also had that internal dialogue between the volunteers and the staff. I saw some testimonials in the previous versions. Really like the testimonials. They seem to be dialed back coming to the more updated versions. So I think that's something that should really stay in there. I think it speaks a lot to the brand. So what I did find was missing there is the last statistics I saw on feral cats, and this was done by Environment Canada, and I understand how much this kind of research would cost, but it would be great if brands like MEOW Foundation and other societies could encourage Environment Canada to get an updated census now that we're 7 years past that. We've had a pandemic. We've had so many things that have impacted this. I think it's really important to get that measure of just how big the problem is that we're dealing with. Again, adding in the more stakeholder impact with the volunteer testimonials, great. The last thing I didn't notice was a competitive analysis of similar endeavors that could highlight growth areas and also highlight some areas that, maybe perhaps we shouldn't do that and streamline to something else. So there's always something that can be learned by your peers or your fellow industries. And I think that's something that really should be in this annual review in order to communicate the magnitude of the problem to the stakeholders effectively. So we've talked about a lot of the things. What exactly am I recommending here? Well, with regards to social media, I'm recommending that you employ or retain a volunteer social media strategist to assist in growing the following, to expand reach, promote awareness, and encourage more brand engagement. I also think you should create a list of curated influencers who have an avid interest in cats and their well-being to work with promotion and reach of the existing channels. Lastly, something that can be done is conducting a sentiment analysis to look at how each stakeholder are reacting to the communications so that we can really narrow down which keywords are resonating the most with our following. We took a look at press releases. The biggest thing here is not just blanketing to the newsrooms, but creating a list of like-minded, avid cat lovers who are journalists from several newsrooms across Calgary region to try and beat that noise. We have a lot going on in the news today. And while the news is still a totally relevant vehicle for us to use, we have to make sure we get that time, we get the attention, and we're in the right place. And if we're not in the right place, then we better be in 10 other places so that we hit them with that place. Furthermore, the annual review. For the most part, beautifully done. Only thing I would suggest here is if it's at all possible to conduct that more updated research on the local cat population. And again, that competitor analysis to analyze the weak points and identify those new opportunities that MEOW Foundation could seek out. So how do we measure the impact of a communications audit? Well, when it comes to social media, it's very difficult to get a general average because the reach and interaction and following that you have on all the different platforms ranges by the platform, by the strategist, by the campaign. There's so many factors. So in order to have something to benchmark against this, I actually benchmarked it against my own self-proprietorship. I run a small company in order to get myself through college. So I did an average of the two growth percentages for following through Instagram and TikTok, and these were my findings. So Instagram is still quite relevant. A lot of people are still using it. It's technically still the #1 platform for looking at pictures and whatnot. However, the growth on Instagram was only 129.95% over a 90-day period. Still great, still getting to the people that we need to see the message getting to. However, when we take a look at TikTok, TikTok has shown an incredibly viral nature. TikTok's measurements over 60 days averaged a growth of 800% in viral growth. So that is exactly where we expect cat content to be on the internet. And I believe MEOW Foundation is already starting to see this uptake with their content in regards to their likes. I believe they're just over 300,000 likes at this point, which is precisely where we expect them to be. It's just the following that's tailing a little bit behind. So if they had that strategist in there to go and follow all those likers that are doing this, the growth could be just astronomical. And then it's not a matter of just attacking the Calgary market. Then we're looking at a national, if not a global market. You know, one of my family members in England could see it and say they want to donate. It's as simple as that. The growth when it comes to Instagram and to social media and TikTok especially is astronomical. So what does that mean for everything moving forward? So in conclusion, we know we can't get direct results without putting them to test in social media. We strongly suggest getting that strategist, getting those influencers, and growing the following exponentially. In social media, we no longer shoot for the sky. We shoot for the moon to land among the stars. I wish those were my words. They're not. They're from Ray Liotta. Great man, rest in peace. Press releases. They are going out with good messages, but they're just not getting picked up in the right place at the right time and beating the noise. Let's get that strategy, getting granular with the journalists, the people who have an avid interest in cats' welfare, and get the messages to the right people at the right time in the right words. And lastly, the annual review. Let's just take it to that next level. If it's at all possible to get that evaluation of the current environment and also take a look at the competition so we can grow MEOW Foundation and be able to save thousands of cats moving forward. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my presentation today. Lastly, why does my opinion matter? Because I'm a stakeholder too. Thank you, MEOW Foundation, for everything that you do.